Hi guys, welcome back to NASA's Thread. Today we're making a skirt with back vents or pleats. So if it's something you're interested in learning, keep watching and let's get started. I've gone ahead to cut out a piece of fabric for my front because I'll be cutting the front first, and I went ahead to roll a line at the starting point. So from the point which I drew my line, I want my skirt to have a band of 1.5 inches. So depending on what you want for yours, go ahead and take that. From that end, I'll be taking the length of my skirt. Now, this is a long skirt, is a straight skirt long. So I'll be taking the length I want for this. So I want my skirt to be 41 inches by the time I finish doing this. I'll be adding an extra 2 inches, that's 43, so that I'll be using the extra 2 inches to hem the end of my skirt. All right, to turn this over with my lining. And I went ahead to rule a line at that point. Okay, so that is the length of my skirt. So still placing my 1.5 inch at that first line I drew, I'll be marking my hip point, which is 8 inches, and then I am going to mark my knee point, which is 18 inches. Then I'll use a rule to mark this out. Okay, so we'll have all our vertical measurements placed down. The next thing we'll be needing to do is our horizontal measurements. Now, the horizontal measurement is simply the circumference of your waist, your hip. Okay, so we're going to be taking our measurements from the close end, like you see me doing. So, what I'm taking is my round waist divided by 4. For me, mine is 7.5. I'll be adding 1 inch for that and 2 inches for seam allowance. Okay, that's 3 inches. So I added 3 inches at that end right there. At the hip area, I'm going to take my hip circumference, which is 40 inches, divided by 4. I have 10 plus 2 inches. Okay, there will be no dot on the hip point. So to get my knee, my round knee, I'm going to minus 6 inches from my hip. Okay, from the hip circumference. Now remember I said my hip is 40 minus 6, I have 34 divided by 4, I have 8.5 inches. I went ahead to mark 8.5 inches at this end, and I'm going to add 2 inches for my seam allowance. All right, so for the full length of the skirt, I'll be taking the measurement I have on my knee, exactly the measurement I have on my knee, and I'll be placing that on the full length of my skirt. So I'm placing 10.5 inches on the full length of my skirt. So I hope you understand this. All right, so this is simply the measurements we need for this. We're going to use our curved rule to make our connections like so.
Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me.
Okay, so we finished connecting, and that's everything we need for our front piece. Just go ahead and cut this out. All right, so we're through with the front. We'll go ahead and work on the back. So I've gone ahead to fold in another piece of fabric that I'll be using for my back. Now you can see, instead of the usual 2 to 3 inches extra at the back, I have more than the usual. Okay, so what I have at the back is 10 inches. You can use 8 inches or 10 inches for yours also. Okay, so I'm using 10 inches. That's the allowance there is for the vents, the pleats at the back. So that is what my 10 inches is for. So we'll go ahead and take our other measurements right now. Now, because we're adding a vent, it does not mean we're going to we are going to remove our zip allowance. Okay, so at the waist area, we're going to mark our zip allowance right now. At the waist area where we have our waist point, I'm going to mark 1.5 inch. Okay, so I'm using 1.5 inches for my zip allowance. I went ahead to mark 1.5 inch at the waist point, and at the hip point I marked 1.5 inches. and also at the knee area I marked 1.5 inches. Now for our butt sitting allowance, because of the position of the butt, is around the hip area, I'm going to add 1/2 inch to that. Okay, so instead of just 1.5 inch at the hip area, we're going to have 2 inches. Okay, so that's simply what I just added. I added 1/2 inch to that point, and we're going to make our connections at this point right now. All right, so we've connected that. Now we're not going to extend this zip allowance to the end. Remember, our skirt has a vent. Okay, so we're going to cut from the waist area. We're going to cut from the waist area into this other end. Okay, just watch what I'm going to do carefully. You're not going to cut straight down from the zip allowance area. Okay, so you're going to cut it like so. You can see the extension we have at this other end. Then we'll go ahead and trace out the other part the way it is. Okay, so this is what we have. This is our back. This is what it looks like. You can still see the close end. Okay, I didn't mention this earlier. Where you're cutting at the back, you need that other end to be folded like it is when you're cutting the front. Okay, so I hope you understand that. So the next thing we're going to do is to mark our dart position. So the dart position is simply gotten from the bust span, which is a nipple to nipple measurement. Mine is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5, and I'm adding 1/2 inch to that for stitching allowance. Okay, so I'm going ahead to mark 4 inches for my dart position right there, and I'll make a notch there so I can identify it while I'm working on my skirt.
You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me alone.
So I'm just marking the length of my dart, which is going to be 5 inches. That's just what I did right now. Okay, so I want the front part of my skirt to have like a slant. Not necessarily a slant, it's just so that the skirt will sit properly on the waist area. So we're going to do that also. So from the front part, this is only going to be at the front end of our skirt. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to um mark 1 inch from the center front of the skirt and then slant it to nothing at the other end. Okay, you want to ensure that your slant meets the back part of your skirt exactly at the point it should. Okay, it should not be lower than the back part, so that while stitching this down, you're not going to experience any form of troubles. Okay, so I just did my slant and I'm cutting off the excess from there. So this is what we have at the end of the day. And I'll just go ahead to impute my notch, the notch I made for my dart, back on my different part of my skirt, because I actually cut this out while I was making the slant in the front. All right, so I'll go ahead to cut this out on my lining piece and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so you want to ensure that you take note of that hemming allowance you added. Okay, so the lining piece will be 2 inches shorter than the main material. Okay, so this is what I have after I did that. This is the back piece of my skirt. So I cut the lining to be 2 inches shorter than the main material. That's the main skirt, the main fabric. Okay, so this is what you should do for yours also, so that by the time you stitch down the down part and you pull, the material is going to cover up for the lining and then you get the exact length you want to. Okay, so we need to start working on this. I'm going to turn this over to the front part of my skirt. So because the main part of this tutorial is for the vent, we'll be working mostly with the back part of our fabric. Okay, so I place this down this way, front facing me. Okay, the front part of the right side of the fabric is facing up. Okay, and I'm placing my lining piece on it like so. So you want to ensure that the down part, the end part of the skirt and the lining, they are matching perfectly end to end, and then go ahead to run a stitch with 1/2 inch at that end. Okay, so that's just what you want to make sure to do. By the time you do that, you will see the allowance at the top. Okay, so we'll go ahead and stitch this down first before we run our other stitches for this. So I've gone ahead to stitch it down like this. Okay, so I've stitched it down. You can see the allowance we have on the top side of our fabric. Okay, so we'll have to pull our lining and ensure it is meeting with the top part of our skirt, and then stitch down the sides of the skirt, stitch down the shape part of our skirt where we have our vents, where the zip allowance area and our vent, then stitch down the other side of the skirt. Okay, so you want to ensure you pull this properly so that meeting well, and then you go ahead and stitch it all through, leaving the top part of it. So I've done that. You can see how this is. Now you can see the pull, how the down part of the skirt is pulling. Okay, and this is the other part of the skirt, the top part that is open. So I'll go ahead and make notches at this shape area of our skirt, so that by the time I iron this down, it is going to be well pressed and give me a smooth look. So we're going to flip this over to the front so we can give this a very good press. Okay, so I've gone ahead to iron this. You can see how smooth this is. You want to ensure you iron this properly so that it is smoothing. And I went ahead to place my darts. I've gone ahead to dart my skirt at my dart position. You can see them like so. Okay, so let's continue working on the skirt. We're going to flip this back to the wrong side of our skirt. That's on where we have our lining area. We're going to place this, ensure they're well placed. Then we'll go ahead and stitch down the zip allowance area. Now remember, I used 1.5 inches for my zip allowance, and after flipping this around, like after stitching this and flipping around, I no longer have 1.5 inch. What I have is 1 inch instead, because I used 1/2 inch to stitch this around. Okay, so I'm going to mark 1 inch from the waist point of my skirt. I'm going to mark that down. Okay, and then I'll connect them together like so. So you want to ensure you're using exactly what you kept for your zip allowance, okay, so that um you don't exhaust the allowance you should have. Okay, so on the vent area of this, to get the line straight down, I'm going to take the measurement I have here. What I have there is um 9 inches, so I went ahead to mark 9 inches from that end to this other end. Then I'm going to rule a line straight down to the end of the skirt. And then I'm going to take my 1 inches from that line I drew so that I can continue my line to the end of the skirts. Okay, so I hope you understand. The line I drew earlier is just a means for me to mark my line accurately to the full length of my skirt, and I'm just connecting this back to meet that's the main zipper allowance line I took initially. Okay, so I'll go ahead and run a stitch from the top of this to the end of it like so. Okay, so I've stitched it down. As you can see, if I flip this over to the front, we have this closed. Okay, but if I flip this to the back, you can see our vent extension at this other end. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to open up our seams and then give it a really good press. Okay, you want to iron this to be flat. Okay, it's important to always iron as you go so that it comes out neatly and looks good. So we're going to go ahead and iron this down. So I've done that. You can see I've opened my seams by ironing it down. So the next two we want to work on is our vent, okay, the most important part of our skirt right now. So I'll take this back to the position it was before. Remember when I cut out this, I used 10 inches to cut out my vent. Okay, so I'll go ahead and take that measurement. Now you can decide to divide this by take 2 like I'm doing now. I'm using 2 inches for the difference between each other, or you can use 2.5 depending on how much pleats you want at the end of your skirt. Okay, it totally depends on how much. I wanted mine to be more, like I wanted it to be full, the pleats to be full, so I decided to use 2 inches for mine. Okay, so I took a difference of 2 inches from that end at the top, and I'm going to take the same thing. Now you notice where I'm taking my measurement from. It is actually from my zipper allowance line. Okay, so ensure you take your accurate measurement, and I'm going to connect my lines together like so.
You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you get me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you.
So we connected them together. You can see this is what we have. We have about 5 of them. That means I divided my 10 into 5 parts. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is to run loose stitches on those lines I have made, those 4 lines I've made. I'll go ahead and run loose stitches on those lines. Okay, and we are going to continue working on this. So just go ahead and run loose stitches on the lines. So I've done that. See, I've run my loose stitches on the line. Remember I said we have about 5 columns of this, okay, but we actually did our stitches on 4 lines to give us 5. So the next we want to do is to extend the next we want to do, sorry, is to place the lines, the stitched lines matching with our zipper allowance line. Okay, sorry, I'm going to explain this very carefully. Okay, so we have to open up the, you can see they have like a fold, to say, I don't know the right words to use. Okay, so you're going to place the lines, those little stitches you made on your skirt, to match with the zipper allowance line we stitched earlier on this. Okay, so you ensure that they are placed like so, and they're placed like so at the top and also at the end, and you go ahead to iron, press it down, iron it properly, make sure you iron them flattened. Okay, this is more like making kissing prints, right? So you open up the area where you made the stitch, and then you will notice that they open up on both ends. You can see how mine appears. So you have to press them flat like so. Ensure the stitch lines you're making or you're taking matches with the zipper allowance line. That's like the central line we made earlier on the skirt. Okay, I'm actually taking my time to explain this because this is the most important part of our skirt. Okay, so I hope you understand what I am trying to explain. Okay, so I'll do the same thing for the other ones also. Open it up, ensure the lines, the stitch lines, the threads are matching with the midline I had earlier, and then I'll go ahead and press it down. So you want to take your time while you're doing this. Okay, you want to take your time while you're doing this. Okay, it might come as if it's a bit stressful, but you want to take your time so that you get the accurate and needed result needed for this. Okay, so I went ahead to open mine flat and then iron it down. So you need your iron for the process of the skirt making.
Wind and rain, you're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, well, I don't wanna jinx it, baby.
So finish ironing this down. So by the time you finish, for mine, I have five on the side and five on the other side. So five on the right and five on the left. Remember, I used 10, so I used two for my division. So I wanted mine to be more. So go ahead and run a stitch at this other end. So I've stitched it down right there to hold them all in place. So go ahead and continue working on our skirt. Now, while I was doing the back part of my skirt, I went ahead to turn the front with a lining piece, as you can see, and then I went ahead to impute my darts at their right position. So for this, to join the sides of the skirt together, I used half of an inch to flip my skirt to the side, so I no longer have 2 inches like I used. Okay, so what I have is 1.5 inch. So I'm marking 1.5 inch on the sides of my skirt so that I can join the front and the back together. So if you use 1.5 inches for your allowance, your seam allowance, after turning this to the right side, you're going to have less than that. If you want, you can also take your measurements around this before marking this down so that you are sure of what you're doing. Or if you know you use exactly half of an inch for turning your skirt over, you just use 1 inch to join the side seams together. Okay, so I just went ahead to mark 1.5 inch on both sides of my skirt, and I'm going to use that the allowance I have to join the side seam, the front and the back skirt together.
You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite.
To the fabric, okay, and I'm gonna head to stitch it down. So this is our skirt. I went ahead to loosen the zipper area where I'm placing my zip around my skirt, and next thing I want to do is to fix my band. Okay, so remember I said I wanted my band to be 1.5 inch by the time I'm through with this, so I went ahead to cut out a band of 3.5 inches. So by the time I flip this over, I'm going to have 1.5 inch. Okay, so this is how we're going to stitch down our band. From the inside of our skirt, we're going to place it like so, as you can see, and stitch it round, after which we'll flip it over to the front, tucking about half of an inch of the front, okay, and then stitch it down and ensure you have 1.5 inch. And after that, start doing that to go ahead and fix our zipper to our skirt. So I've done that. I fixed the band, as you can see, and I've also gone ahead to fix the zipper for the skirts. All right, so the remaining thing we have to do on our skirt is to loosen our pleats, the loose stitches we made, so that we can see this thing, our vents. So I'm going to use my seam ripper to take out the loose stitches I made.
You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, 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 oh.
Okay, so we finished loosening our loose stitch. That's the loose stitch we made earlier on. So you can see how this looks like. So we're going to flip this over to the front so that we get a good look at what we're doing. All right, you can see that place is still enclosed. So the next thing we're going to do is to loosen the zipper allowance, the zipper allowance stitch we made earlier, we're going to loosen that till we get to the point where our vent is stopping. That's the knee point. So we're going to lose all that down so that that part of the skirt will be open.
You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry. Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're channeling wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you.
So we'll finish with everything losing. Okay. So this is our skirt. This is what it looks like. So by the time we open this up, I'm just going to pick out the threads I have on this.
Don't leave me here high and dry. Oh, 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 oh.
So by the time we open this up, this is what it looks like. You can see our pleats at the back of the skirt. Okay. And I went ahead to wear the skirt to give you a better view. You can see how the skirt looks like. Okay. Let me know in the comment section if you enjoyed watching this. And if you've not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for watching and see you in the next tutorial video. Bye.